Your garden will cost you money again this May. Not because the plants are bad, because nobody told you which ones you only ever need to buy once. I spent 11 years replanting the same beds every spring. Annuals in, annuals out. It felt like gardening. It was not. It was a subscription I had not agreed to. Then, a neighbor handed me a paper bag of seeds over the fence. No label. Just scatter these in May, she said, and stepped back. By the second spring, they had filled a 12-foot border I had been struggling with for 3 years. I have not spent a penny on that part of the garden since. 20 plants do this. Number 17 seeded itself along the same French farmhouse wall for 60 uninterrupted years. Number 11 was carried in Roman military kits across 3 continents. And number 1 compounds every single year it stays in your ground. Subscribe before we start. This list only needs to land once. Number 20, Forget-Me-Not, Myosotis sylvatica. Start here. This is the easiest win on the list. Once you have Forget-Me-Not, you always have it. In May, it is already scattering thousands of tiny seeds across bare soil before most gardeners notice it has finished flowering. Seeds need light to germinate. Do not bury them. Scatter on the surface and let rain do the rest. It thrives across zones 3 through 8. In zones 9 and 10, treat it as a cool season plant and sow in late fall. It prefers part shade and consistently moist, humus-rich soil. A woodland edge, a shaded border, that is where it comes most alive. Thomas Jefferson grew it at Monticello in the early 1800s, tucked along the north border of the kitchen garden. He noted it required no attention after the first sowing. He was right. Pull out about 1/3 of your plants once they go leggy in early summer. That pressures the remaining plants into producing more seeds. Next spring, you will have noticeably denser coverage. I did this in 2021. The following March, the north border was a solid sheet of blue. I have not touched a seed packet since. Think of it as the plant that does the gardening while you are doing something else. The best gardens are not always the ones that received the most attention. Number 19, Sweet William, Dianthus barbatus. This is the plant that bloomed in the same corner of a Provençal farmhouse garden for 60 consecutive years without a single replanting. The gardener who first put it in the ground died in 1963. The plant is still there. Sweet William is technically a biennial. Leaves the first year, flowers the second. But because it self-seeds so aggressively, it behaves exactly like a perennial. Plant it once. It never leaves. May is the ideal sowing window. Soil is warm enough for germination in 7 to 14 days, but serious heat has not arrived to stress young seedlings. Zones 3 through 9. It performs better in slightly lean soil. Overly rich beds produce lush, soft foliage with weak, floppy stems and far fewer flowers. Give it ground where things have struggled before. Sweet William crosses freely with other Dianthus species. Grow different varieties close together, and the self-seeded offspring produce color combinations you never planted. Unpredictable, beautiful, and completely free. The flowers are edible, mildly spicy, faintly clove-like. Toss them in salads or use as a garnish and confuse your dinner guests entirely. Think of it as a garden that quietly reinvents itself every year without asking for your input. Some things do their best work when you stop directing them. Number 18, Rose Campion, Lychnis coronaria. Shocking magenta flowers against silver gray, almost velvety foliage. It stops people mid-stride. They always ask what it is. Rose Campion is short-lived, usually 2 to 3 years, but it self-seeds so enthusiastically, you will never lose it. The bigger challenge is controlling where it spreads, rather than keeping it going. Zones 4 through 8, one of the most drought-tolerant plants on this list. Poor, dry, gravelly soil. Site, it thrives. Rich, moist, amended soil. It flops. This is a plant for neglected corners. Spots where nothing else cooperates. Sow on the surface in May. It needs light for germination. Do not cover the seeds. Thin to 12 to 18 inches once seedlings reach a few inches tall. The woolly silver foliage is unappealing to deer and rabbits. If wildlife pressure in your garden is constant, this plant belongs near the top of your list. It brings color and structure where other plants get eaten before they establish. I planted Rose Campion along the dry gravel strip beside my front path in 2018. That strip had defeated everything I had tried. The Campion treated it like a 5-star hotel. Think of it as proof that the most dramatic things in a garden often come from the most difficult ground. Beauty and hardship are not opposites. In a garden, they are frequently the same thing. Number 17. Evening primrose, Winothera biennis. Sit in your garden at dusk in midsummer. Watch this plant open its flowers in real time. Each one takes about 30 seconds to unfold. That is not a gardening tip. That is one of the most quietly extraordinary things a garden can offer. Biennial, but self-seeding so reliably, it behaves like a perennial in practice. Zones 4 through 9. Poor soil, dry conditions, full sun, partial shade. It grows along roadsides for a reason. This plant is a survivor. Sow directly in May on the surface of the soil. It does not transplant well, so direct sowing is the only way. Thin seedlings to about 6 inches once they establish. The seed heads are actively eaten by goldfinches and small songbirds through late fall and into winter. Leave them standing. Your garden becomes a natural feeding station without any additional effort from you. Height can reach 4 to 6 feet in bloom. Place it at the back of borders or let it naturalize in wilder areas. Think of it as the plant that works the day shift for you and the night shift for the wildlife. A garden that only performs when you are watching it is only doing half its job. Number 16. Love in a Mist, Nigella damascena. The name alone earns it a place in any garden. And when you see it, delicate flowers floating inside a cloud of feathery thread-like foliage, the name makes complete sense. Technically an annual, but it self-seeds so prolifically it earns a place on this list without question. Sow it once in May, and your job is done for life. It performs across zones 2 through 11, plantable in almost any temperate garden on Earth. Direct sow only. It hates being transplanted. Scatter seeds on bare soil in full sun and press in gently, no more than 1/8 of an inch deep. The seed pods are just as decorative as the flowers, striped, papery, balloon-like pods that dry on the plant. Many experienced gardeners grow it primarily for the pods, not the flowers. Collect 1/3 of the pods for dried arrangements. Let 2/3 drop and self-seed. You get the display and the perpetual planting at the same time. A May sowing gives you blooms by early July. Think of it as a plant that gives you 2 harvests, one for the vase and one for the garden. The most generous things in a garden keep giving long after you have stopped asking them to. Number 15. Borage, Borago officinalis. Here is a color you will almost never find anywhere else in a garden. Not sky blue, not lavender, not powder blue. The truest, most saturated blue in the plant world. Borage, on a plant that also smells of cucumber, feeds every bee in the neighborhood, and costs almost nothing to establish. Technically an annual, but plant it in May and you will never need to plant it again. Zones 2 through 11. Full sun, average to poor soil, sharp drainage. The worse the soil, the better the flavor if you are growing it for culinary use. Direct sow only. Press seeds about 1/2 inch into the soil. Space plants roughly 12 inches apart after thinning. Borage grown near tomatoes and squash repels tomato hornworm and attracts predatory insects that control aphid populations. It earns its space in the vegetable garden twice over. The flowers are edible with a mild cucumber flavor. Freeze them in ice cubes for summer drinks. A single plant in full flower can have a dozen bees working it simultaneously. Think of it as the plant that feeds you, feeds the bees, and protects your tomatoes without being asked. The most useful things in a garden are rarely the ones that announce themselves loudest. Number 14. California poppy, Eschscholzia californica. Entire hillsides in orange. That image is burned into the memory of anyone who has driven through California in spring. The reason those hillsides look that way is not mystery or coincidence. This plant self-seeds aggressively, spreads with almost no help, and asks almost nothing from the soil. Best suited to zones 6 through 10. In cooler zones 3, 4, and 5, sow in May after your last frost date. Early May is meaningfully better than late May in warm climates. It prefers cool soil during germination. Scatter seeds on the surface. Here's the critical mistake most people make. Overwatering. California poppy evolved in drought. Excessive moisture is the most common reason it fails to establish. Sow and step back. Most gardeners only grow the classic orange variety. Name selections now exist in cream, yellow, pink, burgundy, and deep red. Plant a mixture and let them cross-pollinate. Over 4 or 5 years, your colony drifts into color combinations nobody sells in any packet. Think of it as a color experiment that runs itself. The most surprising things in a garden are often the ones that needed the least from us to arrive. Number 13. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium. If you are new here, this is what we do on this channel. We tell you what the plant actually does, not just what it looks like. Hit subscribe. The May window is closing. Yarrow is the toughest plant on this list. Drought, poor soil, full sun, partial shade, neglect, compacted ground, it handles all of it. It feeds bees, butterflies, beetles, and hoverflies simultaneously, dries beautifully for arrangements, and self-seeds reliably across almost every temperate climate. Zones 3 through 9. Surface, sow in May. Seeds need light. Do not cover. Press gently and allow 14 to 21 days for germination. Yarrow has been used in herbal medicine for thousands of years to slow bleeding and wounds. One of its oldest names is soldier's woundwort. The leaves contain a compound called achilletin with genuine mild astringent properties, which is where the genus name Achillea originates, from the legend that Achilles used it to treat his soldiers' wounds at Troy. Knowing that history makes this plant feel more alive in your garden. Yarrow comes in pink, red, yellow, apricot, and soft lilac in named varieties, well beyond the common white wildflower form. Think of it as the plant that has been working in human gardens since before recorded history and has not stopped once. Some plants do not need our enthusiasm to keep going. They just need a patch of ground. Number 12. Hollyhock, Alcea rosea. The plant of old farmhouses, cottage gardens, and stone walls baked in afternoon sun. A particular romance attaches to hollyhock that almost no other garden plant carries, and it is one of the easiest self-seeders you will ever grow. Short-lived perennial to biennial depending on conditions, but it self-seeds so reliably that in practice it behaves as a long-term perennial. Some gardeners report the same colony occupying the same corner for 25 to 30 years without a single deliberate replanting. Zones 3 through 9. 5 to 8 feet is common. Plant against walls, fences, or firmly at the back of borders. Sow directly in May, pressing seeds about a 1/4 inch deep. Space 18 to 24 inches after thinning. Direct sowing only. Hollyhocks develop deep tap roots and will not survive transplanting after the first couple of weeks. Hollyhocks are susceptible to rust, a fungal disease producing orange-brown pustules on lower leaves. The most effective management is to treat them deliberately as biennials. Sow fresh seed into a slightly different position each season. This breaks the disease cycle. Self-seeded offspring tend to drift away from heavily infected areas on their own. Think of it as a plant that has been leaning against English garden walls since the Tudors and has no intention of leaving. Some things earn their place, not through novelty, but through staying. Number 11. Purple. Top vervain, Verbena bonariensis. No other plant on this list does what this one does. Not the flowers, the space around them. Tall, wiry stems, almost leafless, crowned with tiny purple clusters suspended 4 to 6 feet above everything else. It does not compete with the plants around it. It floats above them. Garden designers use it constantly for exactly this reason. It layers through borders without blocking anything, moves in the faintest breeze, and makes whatever is growing beneath it look considered and deliberate. Zones 7 through 11 as a true perennial. In zones 5 and 6, it behaves as a reliably self-seeding annual, dies back in winter, returns from seed every spring. Zone 4 gardeners. Test it in a sheltered microclimate. Surface sow in May. Seeds need light. Press them barely into the soil. Allow up to 21 days for germination, and do not give up. Verbena bonariensis is one of the 5 most significant butterfly plants you can grow in a temperate garden. Its deep, narrow flower tubes are specifically accessible to long-tongued butterflies, swallowtails, painted ladies, monarchs, that cannot feed efficiently on shorter, broader flowers. Think of it as the plant that makes everything around it look like it was designed that way. The best companions in a garden, as in life, are the ones that make the people beside them look better. Number 10. Foxglove, Digitalis purpurea. Every part of foxglove is toxic to humans, dogs, cats, and horses. I say this plainly because it belongs in any real conversation about this plant. If you have young children or pets in your garden, place it thoughtfully. handle it with gloves. With that said, gardeners have grown foxglove in cottage gardens, woodland gardens, and formal borders for centuries. The key is knowing what it is. Biennial, but a relentless self-seeder. Establish it once, and it does not leave. Zones 4 through 9. Part shade preferred, particularly in hotter zones. Rich, consistently moist, well-drained soil gives the best results. Sow on the surface in May. The seeds are extremely fine. Mix with dry sand before sowing to distribute them evenly. Do not cover. Light is required for germination. Foxglove is the original botanical source of digitalis, the heart medication in clinical use for over 200 years. The same chemistry that makes it toxic makes it medically significant. It also means deer and rabbits instinctively avoid it, making foxglove one of the most reliable deer-resistant tall plants you can grow. Think of it as the plant that heals and harms in equal measure and asks you to pay attention. Respect in a garden, as everywhere else, begins with knowing what you are dealing with. Number 9. Bee Balm Monarda didyma. The moment bee balm blooms, it becomes a magnet. Bold, shaggy flower heads in red, pink, white, and lavender. Bees in large numbers, but also hummingbirds. Less expected, genuinely exciting the first time you watch it happen. A true perennial that spreads through both underground rhizomes and self-seeding. One plant becomes a vigorous colony within 3 to 4 seasons. Zones 3 through 9, native to North America, deeply suited to that ecosystem in ways non-native plants cannot replicate. Surface sow in May. Seeds need light. Or divide established plants in spring. Divisions establish and flower significantly faster than seed-grown plants. Space 18 to 24 inches apart. The leaves carry a strong complex fragrance, somewhere between oregano and citrus. The Onondaga people, a nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, brewed them as a medicinal and ceremonial tea for centuries before European contact. That is why bee balm is historically known as Oswego tea. That history, attached to a plant you are growing in your own garden, is worth knowing and worth passing on. Bee balm is susceptible to powdery mildew in humid climates. Choose resistant varieties. Jacob Klein, Raspberry Wine, and Marshall's Delight are all significantly more resistant than the straight species. Think of it as a plant with a history long enough to outlast every trend in gardening. The most rooted things in a garden are usually the ones that were here before the garden was. Number 8. Columbine, Aquilegia vulgaris. Grow multiple varieties together and the offspring cross between parents, producing entirely new color combinations. After 3 or 4 years, you will have flowers nobody is selling in any catalog anywhere. Nodding heads with long, backward projecting spurs, petals layered in contrasting colors. Nothing in the garden world looks quite like them. True perennial, zones 3 through 9. One of the few plants on this list that not only tolerates shade, but genuinely prefers it. Under a tree canopy, along north-facing borders, between established hostas. That is where columbine comes completely alive. Sow on the surface in May. Here's the germination technique almost nobody discusses. Place seeds in a damp paper towel, seal in a Ziploc bag, and refrigerate for 3 to 4 weeks before sowing. This is cold stratification. It mimics winter dormancy and dramatically improves germination rates. Without it, germination is slow and uneven. With it, consistent sprouting within 2 to 3 weeks. Columbine is a critical host plant for the columbine dusky-winged butterfly. The caterpillars feed exclusively on Aquilegia foliage. No columbine dusky-wing. That specificity matters enormously in a garden trying to support biodiversity. Think of it as a plant that paints new pictures every year using colors you never chose. The most creative gardens are not always the ones most carefully planned. Number 7. Black-Eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta. If you picture a summer prairie garden, effortlessly sun-drenched and alive, Black-Eyed Susan is almost certainly at its core. Deep golden yellow petals surrounding a raised dark central cone. Weeks of bloom. Almost everything that flies visits it. When the flowers finish, the seed heads feed birds through autumn and deep into winter. True perennial, zones 3 through 9. Native to North America. Over 17 species of native bees are specifically documented as foraging on Rudbeckia. That is not a general pollinator plant. That is a specialist resource. Sow on the surface in May. Seeds need light. Press gently. Do not bury. Germination in 7 to 21 days. Thin to 12 to 18 inches once established. Black-eyed Susan is frequently confused at the garden center with Gloriosa daisy, Mexican sunflower, and Helenium. The reliable identification point is texture. The leaves and stems are distinctly rough and hairy, almost sandpapery. That is your confirmation when labels are wrong, which happens more often than garden centers would like to admit. Leave the seed heads standing through winter. In January, watching goldfinches work through a stand of dried black-eyed Susan is one of the quieter, more satisfying moments a garden gives you. Think of it as a prairie in miniature, built from a single packet and a patch of bare soil. Some of the most alive places in a garden are the ones left alone long enough to become something. Number 6. Sweet Rocket. Hesperus matronalis. Most people discover Sweet Rocket by smell before they ever see it. On a warm May evening, the fragrance drifts across the garden before you locate the source. Then you find it. Tall, loose spires of white and pale purple flowers, 4 feet high, glowing slightly at dusk. John Gerard documented it in his Herbal of 1597 as a common and beloved garden plant across England. It was among the first European garden flowers brought to North America by colonists in the 1600s and naturalized so successfully, most people now assume it is native. Biennial, but a vigorous self-seeder. Plant once in May, and it becomes a permanent resident. Zones 3 through 9. It thrives in part shade. A north-facing border with morning light and afternoon shadow is exactly what it wants. Sweet Rocket is most fragrant after sunset. Position a clump within 10 feet of where you sit on summer evenings. On still air, the scent is extraordinary. Plant it deliberately for evenings, not just for looks. Think of it as the plant that saves its best performance for after the sun goes down. A garden that only rewards you during the day is giving you half of what it could. Number 5. Verbascum. Verbascum thapsus. Most people assume Great Mullein is simply part of the landscape. It is. But it is also one of the most architecturally dramatic self-seeders you can put in a garden, and it costs almost nothing to establish. A stout spike of yellow flowers reaching 5 to 7 feet. A basal rosette of leaves so densely covered in silver white felt the plant looked sculpted rather than grown. Pliny the Elder documented it in Naturalis Historia in the 1st century, recommending dried leaves as torch material and flowers steeped in oil as a remedy for earache. It has been in continuous use since. Biennial, but a prolific self-seeder. Zones 3 through 9. Full sun, dry poor soil, sharp drainage. It thrives where almost nothing else will grow. Sow on the surface in May. Seeds need light. Do not cover, thin to 18 inches apart. The first year it forms a flat silver rosette. The second year, the spike shoots up. Verbascum spikes are one of the most effective structural verticals you can add to a garden for almost no cost. A single established colony creates year-round architecture. Rosettes in winter, spikes in summer, dried structures in autumn that hold form until January. Think of it as the plant that turns a neglected corner into a statement. The most striking things in a garden are not always the ones that required the most effort to grow. Number 4. Honesty. Lunaria annua. In late winter, when almost nothing is doing anything, honesty is already there. Translucent silver seed pods, disc-shaped, the size of a 50-pence piece. Catch whatever light is available and glow against bare stems. One of the most genuinely beautiful things a garden produces in the off-season. And after the first year, it costs you nothing. Honesty appears in Thomas Tusser's 500 Points of Good Husbandry, published in 1580, among the plants recommended for the kitchen garden. It was grown for the pods as much as the flowers, used decoratively through winter, a habit so sensible it has never stopped. Biennial, but a dedicated self-seeder. Zones 4 through 8. Part shade preferred. A dry shaded corner under a wall that has defeated everything else is frequently where honesty performs best. Sow directly in May on the surface. Seeds need light. Flowers appear the following spring, followed by pods through summer and into winter. I started a colony along the north side of my garden shed from 6 plants in 2017. I have never added a single seed since. In February, when the rest of the garden is still deciding whether to wake up, that corner is already putting on a show. Think of it as the plant that does its best work in the season everyone else has given up on. The gardeners who enjoy winter are usually the ones who planted for it in May. Number 3, Aquilegia, Aquilegia canadensis. Drop a comment right now and tell me which of these 20 you are planting first. I read every single one. The native North American columbine is a different proposition from its European cousin. Smaller, more delicate, with red and yellow spurred flowers that hummingbirds navigate with a precision that looks rehearsed. Documented in North American botanical literature since the 1700s and collected by the botanist André Michaux during his survey of American flora between 1785 and 1796. It spreads through self-seeding across zones 3 through 8, preferring the dappled light of woodland edges and partially shaded borders. Sow in May using the same cold stratification method as Aquilegia vulgaris. Damp paper towel, Ziploc bag, 4 weeks in the refrigerator, then sow on the surface. Aquilegia canadensis is a primary early spring nectar source for ruby-throated hummingbirds returning north after winter migration. The timing of its bloom and the timing of that migration have co-evolved over thousands of years. Plant it and you are participating in a biological relationship far older than your garden. Think of it as a hummingbird feeder that also happens to be one of the most beautiful things you can grow. Some gardens are just pieces of a much longer story. This plant reminds you of that every spring. Number 2, oxeye daisy, Leucanthemum vulgare. If you have ever walked through a June meadow and felt that particular quality of aliveness, white flowers catching light, insects everywhere, the whole thing humming, Pliny the Elder documented it in Naturalis Historia in the 1st century. It arrived in North America with European settlers in the 1600s and naturalized so completely that it now reads as native to most people who encounter it. The ecosystem learned to use it long before anyone thought to plant it deliberately. True perennial, zones 3 through 8, full sun, poor to average soil. It spreads through both seed and rhizome. One plant becomes a clump becomes a colony becomes a meadow. Sow on the surface in May. Seeds need light, do not cover, thin to 12 inches apart. Germination in 7 to 14 days. In very fertile soil, oxeye daisy spreads aggressively. Plant it in lean ground or wilder areas where spread is welcome. That is where it is most at home, anyway. Goldfinches, housefinches, and sparrows work through the seed heads from September onward. Think of it as a meadow in a seed packet, one that keeps printing copies of itself for free. The most generous thing a garden can do is show you what it is capable of when you stop trying to control all of it. Number 1, purple coneflower, Echinacea purpurea. If I had to keep only one plant from everything on this list, just one, it would be this. Purple coneflower is what a near-perfect garden plant looks like. Native to the North American prairies, deer-resistant, long-blooming, often 8 to 10 continuous weeks from midsummer into fall, medically significant, ecologically essential, and one of the most complete pollinator plants in the temperate world. Rose pink to purple petals sweeping back from a raised, spiky bronze-orange central cone. When a bumblebee lands on that cone and works it systematically, it looks like a frame from a nature documentary, except it is in your garden every day. Sow on the surface of raked soil in May. Seeds need light, so no covering. Cold stratification improves results significantly in cooler zones. Damp paper towel, Ziploc bag, 4 weeks in the refrigerator before sowing. Without stratification, germination can take 21 to 30 days. Do not give up. They are coming. Thin to 18 to 24 inches once established. Once mature, the plant lives 5 to 10 years and spreads by both self-seeding and crown division. Over 30 species of native bees and more than 20 species of butterflies are documented foragers on purple coneflower. The seed heads are the primary winter food source for goldfinches across enormous portions of North America. Leave them standing always. Cutting them in autumn is one of the most counterproductive things you can do in a wildlife-friendly garden. The Echinacea genus is among the most commercially distributed herbal supplements in the world. The same plant you are growing for beauty is the one occupying entire shelves in pharmacies. That is not a coincidence. That is a 2,000-year track record. In year 1, purple coneflower builds its root system, modest above-ground growth. Year 2, modest flowers. Year 3, multiple stems, dozens of flowers, self-seeding into the surrounding area. By years 4 and 5, you do not have a plant anymore. You have a colony. That colony feeds birds, bees, and butterflies from July through January without you touching it once. That is why it is number one. It is not just a plant. It is an investment that compounds. Think of it as a decision you make once in May and spend the next decade being glad you made. The best gardens are not the ones that cost the most. They are the ones where someone planted the right thing at the right time and then had the patience to watch what it became. 20 plants, every one of them going in the ground this May. Everyone returning, spreading, and filling your garden for free from this point forward. Here's what I want you to carry away. The Garden Center has built an entire industry on the idea that gardening is a consumable activity. You buy, it grows, it finishes, you buy again. That cycle is not gardening. It is a subscription you never agreed to. The plants on this list break that subscription. They ask you to do one thing: put them in the ground this month, in this window, while the conditions are doing exactly what these plants need. After that, the work is theirs. I have been gardening this way for 3 years. I have not bought a plant since. My garden is larger, more complex, and more alive than it has ever been, and it costs me less every year, not more. The mistake most gardeners make is tidying too early. If you deadhead everything in autumn, rake your beds bare, and apply heavy mulch, you are removing seeds before they can germinate and covering the soil surface that seeds need to make contact with. Leave some seed heads. Leave patches of bare or lightly raked soil. Let these plants do what they are biologically designed to do. Your job, after May, is to get out of the way. Tell me in the comments which of these 20 you are planting first. If you already grow any of them, tell me how they performed in your zone. I read every comment. If someone you know is about to spend $100 at the garden center this weekend on plants they will replace next year, send this to them. The window is open. It will not wait. Stay sharp. Keep growing.